How do you react when you see, a professor who, a Cornell University professor, calls Hamas terror attacks exhilarating and exciting, This is Cornell University. We have a friend here that went to Cornell, Dink. This is a New York Post story. Cornell, matter of fact, before I even say it, because people are like, well, how do you know this is the truth? Let's just play the clip and let's let you hear what this professor at Cornell said. Rob, if you can make this bigger, it's 24 seconds. Go ahead and play this clip.
It was exhilarating. It was exhilarating. It was energetic. And if they weren't exhilarated by this challenge to the monopoly of violence, by this shifting of the balance of power, then they would not be human. I was exhilarated.
Okay, stand with Palestine, and you see on the occupation, whatever it says to the right. Let me finish up the story. Cornell professor Russell Rickford sparked controversy with comments made during a pro-Palestine rally. He described Hamas' recent terror on Israel, which caused over 1,400 casualties, as exhilarating and energizing, asserting that it had shifted the balance of power and punctuated Israel's invincibility illusion. Rickford's speech at the rally included remarks that it was exhilarating, monopoly of violence. The crowd at the rally joined in chanting, "From the river of the sea of Palestine will be free," a slogan deemed anti-Semitic by the American Jews. And let me continue with this, because remember, a lot of these Ivy League schools are sitting on 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and I think Harvard's sitting on $60 billion of endowment. Many of this money has been paid by people that are pro-Israel, and to the point where billionaires, this is a Daily Mail article, drop Ivy League funding over failures to condemn Hamas. Page 11, if you want to go to it. Ivy League shocks. Harvard, the University of Pennsylvania face a potential loss of $487 million in funding from prominent donors, withdrew support. Billionaire Ken Griffin, who pledged $300 million to Harvard, criticized the university's stance on Hamas, while the Wexner Foundation, which donated $56 million over 30 years, withdrew support, expressing being stunned and sickened. Israel billionaire Aidan Ofer and his wife Batia, who donated $20 million to Harvard, resigned from an executive board. Hedge fund manager Bill Ackman, who donated $17 million to Harvard, said he won't hire students involved. Apollo CEO Mark Rowan called for donors to the University of Pennsylvania to either withdraw funding or send $1 in protest. Former U.S. Ambassador John Huntsman Jr., whose family donated $50 million to UPenn. By the way, John Huntsman Jr. was a former presidential candidate, vowed to halt the future donations, citing UPenn's silence on Hamas. Adam, when you see these stories, when you hear things being said, how do you react?
So, yeah, I've been going deep down the rabbit hole of understanding the sympathy for Hamas, but specifically in America, right? And I came across this article. I mean, here's some numbers for you if you just kind of want to look at this. Only 4 in 10 18 to 29-year-olds, that's essentially Gen Z, and the younger millennials, have a negative view of Hamas. So if you just look at the numbers, overall view 51%. So red is negative, green is positive. But if you go by demographics, you can see that the millennials, Gen X, and boomers, it's all 50+% negative view of a terrorist organization called Hamas. And if you see the marketing campaign that Bibi Netanyahu's doing and the rest of the democratic world is doing, is that Hamas equals ISIS, right?
Yeah.
But the younger generation, almost a quarter of them only a quarter of them thinks that has a negative view of them. And almost, what's that, 30+% actually have a positive view of them. I'm trying to make some sense of this. And I came across this article, this opinion article in the Wall Street Journal, and I kind of want to reiterate what I basically found from that, but essentially address this exact issue of what's going on in modern day academia. So essentially the article was the title of the article was that liberals and leftists need a reckoning with anti-Semitism. And basically it tells the story of the reason that Joe Biden decided to run in 2020. And it basically dates back to what happened in 2017 in Charlottesville, the Unite the Right rally and everything that happened with that, where a white supremacist drove his car into people marching and killed that one young lady, right? So if you recall that was the famous, there were good people on both sides, that whole speech, right? So in that protest, it was tiki torch carrying, almost brown shirt like neo-Nazi fascists, allegedly, that were spouting things like Jews will not replace us. So traditionally, we've seen the far-right neo-Nazi KKK be identified with sort of that mantra of anti-Semitism and everything that comes along with white supremacy. But things have shifted. So now it's not as angry and violent and in your face as it once was. Now it's sort of taking place on the beautiful green leafy campuses of the progressive left, whether it's the Harvard, whether it's the Cornells, whether it's the Berkeleys. It's happening all over this country. And if you just look at the numbers right there, Gen Z, the progressive social democratic left via academia are being indoctrinated into this worldview. So you have our youth, our college students, focusing on things like oppression, white privilege, the hyper obsession with race, identity, sexual orientation, and everything that applies to what is perceived as power and the patriarchy, and essentially what comes down to anti-white men. So the social justice warriors of America. But here are the 2 points that they basically harp on. There's 2 words that I wasn't really too familiar with, but I was like, all right, what does these things mean? They talked about intersectionality, and they talked about decolonization. We're all familiar with America and colonization, imperialism, and all that fun stuff like that. So here's the core ideology of the far left progressive woke agenda. So intersectionality, that all the victims of discrimination are on the basis of race, sex, and sexual orientation are all interlinked. So if you're oppressed, you're all interlinked into one common theme, okay? So the purported victims of this oppression are the most enthusiastic, ironically, of the oppression of against the other groups. So, for instance, if you see the gay rights, if you've seen the Gays for Palestine, this is the cognitive dissonance that's going on in the modern woke academia left. The Gays for Palestine, they're holding up signs, Gays for Palestine. The most ironic part of that is if you tried to do the Gays for Palestine march in Palestine or in the majority of Middle East countries, you would be executed.
Yep.
You would be stoned, you would be hung, you'd be beheaded. So good luck doing that in the country that you are supporting. The cognitive dissonance is alarming to me. Okay, so that's point 1. By the way, Israel is the only country that actually is totally fine with LGBTQ rights.
Yeah.
When I was in Israel, it was like Tel Aviv was one of the gayest things I've ever seen. Whatever.
Like, fine.
I mean, I'm not gay, but do your thing.
And this is the same Adam, not to cut you off, just like the Mia Khalifa, the porn girl that's
Exactly.
pro-Palestine. But don't chop your head off.
Go be an OnlyFans porn star while wearing a hijab on the flag.
You're dead.
You're dead.
Yeah.
But in America,
It's so freaking funny.
and in
point 2.
democratic countries, you can say whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
Point number 2 is the decolonization component, right? So that's the disposing of the dead white males throughout history. Politicians, poets, artists, authors, all that. And the resistance of the oppressed includes what is an armed struggle to get their lands and lives back, okay? So what it essentially comes down to is logic is thrown out the window. It's just pure emotion. It's pure rage. It's pure cognitive dissonance. And this is what they're grappling with when you have a professor basically saying, I'm so enthused by the death of what's perceived as the oppressors, whereas good luck doing those types of rallies, talks in those types of countries.
Great point.
Tom.
I think you can simplify that a little bit, and I understand the academic angle there. What you have is, if you look at those charts, you've got the youth that are split, and it's not liberal extremism. It's Marxism that's mixed in. It's deeper than just, oh, they're liberals or extreme liberals. Yeah, they are extreme liberals, but they're Marxists. You listen to AOC. It's not extreme liberalism. It's Marxism. Listen to the squad. Listen to it very carefully. And you look at their grandparents here, and by the way, it's much more than 50%, Adam. It's 75%. 64% there is very negative, and then quite negative. So you've got 75% of the boomer grandparents. You've got 73% of the boomer parents, and then it moves down in these 2 recent generations. That, my friend, is a graph showing you what happens when you move to extreme left ideology and Marxism on campus.
You know what that tells me?
That's what's going on.
You know what that tells me? 18 to 29, 23% very negative, okay, of Hamas. 17% quite negative. Then you got 60% that either don't know, neither quite positive, or very positive. Okay, who do those 18 to 29-year-olds spend the most time with? Professors, colleges, universities. So guess what, America? I love the fact that these guys are not funding these universities right now, because you know what they're saying? They're voting, finally. And by the way, these are Democrats that are not voting for giving them money. The only guy here that's a Republican that was Ken Griffin. Everybody else was pretty much on the left.
Saying you screwed up my kids and grandkids.
And you know who
no more money.
Wexler is? You know who Wexler is? Wexler is the guy that, he bought that building, 9/11. Yeah, he is connected to the 9/11. If you really want to find out who Lex Wexler is, go type in Les Wexler 9/11 and good luck. You'll be distracted for a couple hours. But, these guys to say we're not doing that anymore. Why? Because they realize you send your kids the way you raise them for 18 years. They come back and they're like, dude, you're not my kid. What the hell happened to you the last 4 years? Well, Daddy, they brainwashed me into thinking you're a moron, you're an idiot, you have no clue what you're talking about. And these are professors that are sitting there. All they want to do is give you a lip service, and there's no exchange.
Yeah.
I'm a college professor. I know what I'm talking about here. You go out and do that. Anyways.
And Pat, not to cut you off, I'd be interested to see if, God forbid, one of these Hamas people that are, coming over through the border blow themselves up or some shit in front of one of these idiots that has no idea what the hell's going on. See how you feel when it hits home, because it's coming. I don't care what anybody says. It's coming.
In the last 72 hours, Border has said that they have found 4 known Iranian, let's just call them troublemakers.
Terror on the terror watch list.
Correct.
So all this pro Hamas. Wait till some shit blows up in front of your face and let's see how your attitude changes.
That's not 100% Mexicans that are trying to flee terrible, terrible things that are going on in Mexico with the cartels.
I'm happy
Let's call it what it is. They're practically refugees. But in the middle of that, it's not 100% people that are really looking for a better life. It's people taking advantage of the river humidity to hide inside it and to get here.
Yeah, and exactly. And going back again on this whole everybody from the left changing their attitude, it was all Trump. Mexicans are rapists. It's like, bro, the Mexicans are going back to Mexico. I've seen videos where they're literally crying and going back because of how shitty it is over here. And it's not Mexicans. It's everybody is coming here. And it's when the CIA is warning us of some shit going down.
What's happened to San Diego, you don't blame them. They get to San Diego and they say, wait a minute, where's all the pictures of the yachts and all the,
Yeah.
Tom, I just want to add one thing to what you said about the Marxism that's going on campus. Rob, would you just Google political horseshoe? Here's one of the things I've learned definitely since being at Valuetainment and understanding just getting smarter, getting more informed, trying to understand how things exist. We're used to, go to images if you don't mind. You think of political ideology on the spectrum that's almost linear. So you have the far left and you have the far right, okay? But the actuality is that the political spectrum is more like a horseshoe. So where you have the far left, the socialist, Marxist, communist, authoritarian regimes, and then you have the very far right, fascist, neo-Nazi, far right nationalist regimes, that you think that they're diametrically opposed and they're on opposite side of the spectrum, but it's not linear. It basically comes into a horseshoe where they sort of meet in the middle, and it just meets at authoritarian intolerance and just complete destruction of whoever does not agree with your viewpoint. And I think that's something that someone might say, well, how does the far left, socialist, Marxist on campus identify with the far right Muslim terrorist organizations? It's because the horseshoe is what's connecting them. Because politically, they are not inclined whatsoever to agree with each other, other than this is my view and you will not change my viewpoint, and I will die for this viewpoint.
Dave, you make a really good point. And for people that don't know this, go study that. But meanwhile, keep listening for a second. Look how close. Remember, Hitler suppressed speech and then said Stalin. And Stalin made one newspaper under glass that sat in the public square called the Pravda. Pravda is a Russian word that means truth. Isn't that funny?
That's hilarious.
And that was there. And then, so what do you see AOC doing? We are using American social media leaders to cancel conservative voices. We do not want them to be heard. That's AOC. That's the squad. Then go all the way and look at the history of fascism and how they suppress speech, and that horseshoe meets right there where we can look and see, even if you don't believe in horseshoe theory, just listen closely. Did Hitler suppress speech? Did Stalin? Is AOC? They eventually meet and they agree, you know what? Our opponents need to shut up. No, we need to shut them up.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, Click right here.